question for you all this morning. Yes, we're in question realm still, right? How many of you are Harry Potter fans? Okay. All right, I'm seeing a good handful. Okay. I'm a bit of a fan myself, and as I was reading this incredible story of Lazarus and Jesus earlier this week, a quote from the 5th book of the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, came to mind. Probably because that's where my older son Zach and I are currently in the series. But in the book, a teenager named Hermione is attempting to explain to her friend Ron how a mutual friend is feeling. Hermione explains that because of a series of events that had happened to this friend, their friend is feeling sad, confused, guilty, worried, scared, mixed up, and grief-stricken. Ron responds by saying, one person can't feel all that at once, they'd explode. And Hermione quips back with, just because you have the emotional range of a teaspoon, doesn't mean we all have. I love that. The emotional range of a teaspoon. It's a funny thing to contemplate, right? Having so little range. And yet it sounds almost lovely. A teaspoon doesn't hold a whole lot. It would be nice to only feel one thing at once sometimes, right? But most of us, I would say, are probably not like that. Most of us, like Hermione's friend, feel a number of different things in any given time. We might feel sadness and confusion, guilt and grief, fear and hope. There is so much to feel in the human condition. And this struck me as I was reading our passage for this morning, I think for a few reasons. We have in this story the shortest verse in all the scriptures. Feel free to tuck that away for the next time you play trivia. It's John 11:35. Does anyone know what that is?
Jesus wept.
Yeah.
Jesus wept.
Jesus wept. It's two simple words, right? Jesus wept. It's a teaspoon amount of information. And those who observed Jesus saw it very simply. We hear them reflect, oh, see how he loved him. It's a simple interpretation to Jesus's tears. See how he loved Lazarus. He is grieving and sad. But we don't actually know if this was all of why Jesus was weeping. So let's go back through the story. Jesus is told Lazarus is ill. He receives that word, but rather than rush to him, he stays where he is for 2 more days. This has always bothered me a little bit. I have questions. Why would you leave a beloved friend when you know they are very ill, when you know you have the power to heal, and you just decide to hang around where you are for 2 more days? We don't hear that those 2 days are monumentally important for Jesus in any way. It's not like we were waiting for a grand event. He didn't have a major work thing to do, but he stays. So that's an interesting wondering. But then he and the disciples do go on their way, whereupon Jesus tells them that he knows Lazarus has died. Again, how he knows this is left unspoken. He sees his friends Mary and Martha grieving the loss of their brother. He sees the crowds, some of whom will also see what he is about to do and then believe in him. He then sees Lazarus' tomb. He knows Lazarus has died. He sees where Lazarus is and knows that while he has died, he is about to raise him, which makes Lazarus very unique in human history as one who dies, is raised, and then, have you ever thought about this, has to suffer again and die again? It's not a particularly cheerful thought. And then surrounding the tomb, Jesus sees something else. He sees others who will attempt to kill him very, very soon. We're on the cusp of that story. In fact, the story tells us that he is returning to an area where folks had previously tried to stone him. And just after our story today, we see an attempt to try and kill Lazarus again. So Jesus is feeling a little more than a teaspoonful here, I think. Jesus feels grief and sadness I imagine there might be some element of fear here. His life is in danger, he knows this. Does he feel guilt for not having gotten there sooner? There are a lot of feelings here. And he's overcome. And he weeps. 2 simple words, a teaspoonful of information, but so much more. It's interesting to note that the book of John, of all the Gospels, is particularly known as being the one that portrays Jesus as sort of this poetic, holy, almost mystical being. There's a lot of poetic imagery in the book of John, and Jesus is often coming out, specifically in the Gospel of John, with very confusing statements. I am the light of the world. All of these very interesting descriptors of himself. But it is here where we see Jesus not in a mystical way, but in a very human way. He weeps. And this is a man, right, in a very patriarchal society who weeps. He holds so many things in tension in this story. The tension between life and death, which is something he knows more about than most. The tension between despair and hope, again, something he is about to teach us about in a deeper way. This all foreshadows the tension, of course, between the cross and the empty tomb, which is why we have this story just before we enter into the Palm Sunday story and Holy Week. And in this season, we know about tensions. We know about the tension between asking hard questions and getting what kind of answer. We know the tensions between a story that we think will go one way that goes sideways. We know the tension between an attempt at being kind and welcoming, but knowing we fail at that. We know the tension between trying to be who we are called to be, and again, not measuring up. We live with all kinds of tensions. Some of us may have tensions between wanting to move forward with an endeavor, but the anxiety around what will happen when we do that. There's a tension between the love we feel for a spouse, or a parent, or children, or a sibling, or a friend, and the total irritation we feel towards them when they do that thing that they do that bothers us. We know what that is. There's the tension between working hard enough to feel productive in our lives, but working too hard and being exhausted and overwhelmed. How do we find that balance? It's very elusive. There's a tension between this beautiful budding spring and knowing that we lost a member of our family this week, our church family. There's a tension between the gorgeous world that we live in and its brokenness. What tensions do you all live with? What conflicting emotions do you carry? It can be difficult to move forward when we feel so deeply and when we encounter the world with a larger emotional range. Okay, God, we feel all these things. Now what? Do we stay here for 2 more days? Do we go there? When we listen to others' stories, as we've been talking about throughout Lent, it opens our minds and our hearts to more than a teaspoon's worth of experiences and emotions and struggles and joys. And when our hearts get bigger, here's the catch. Sometimes they get heavier too, right? When our hearts get bigger for the world, or for our neighbors, or for people in our family, yes, even the ones that do that thing that bothers us, our hearts get heavier when there is pain. Jesus is just a chapter away from his triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and he knows what's coming, or at least, I believe, has a sense. His story is a really big one, and feelings match it. So he breaks down here, and he weeps. It's a lot that he's holding. And what of the other characters in the story? So Mary and Martha both say, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. A lot of people see faith in that sentence. I'll be honest, I hear an edge. Where the heck were you, God? Jesus, where were you, Jesus? Where is God? Feelings, more than a teaspoonful. We hold a lot. So I invite you to reflect with me for a moment on something. Feel free to close your eyes if that helps you focus. This might be a tender reflection, so I want to let you know that unlike some of our other weeks, in recent weeks, we will not be sharing this out loud. This one is for you. But I invite you to either close your eyes if it helps or focus on this gorgeous tree of resurrection butterfly joy that we have in our center here for this Sunday, or somewhere else. Look at the floor, look at the ceiling. And I invite you to recall a time when you were overwhelmed with emotion. This could be a joyful experience. This could be a very sad experience. It could be a mixture. What was the occasion or situation that brought out such feelings for you? Try to remember the sights and the sounds and the smells that surrounded you, and who you were with, if anyone. Bring yourself to that space and remember those feelings. And just give me a thumbs up if you have your memory clearly in mind, if you know where you are. Okay. I'll give it just another minute for folks to think. Okay, thank you. I invite you to open your eyes or come back to this space, to this room here. We won't share these, but I have one exploratory question that I would welcome an answer to. How long ago did your memory take place? When did this happen for you? Was it 2 days ago? Was it years ago? How long ago? Yeah, Rosa.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Thanks. Dorothy.
2012.
2012. Yeah. Melissa.
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay. Karen.
1992.
2016.
I had a couple.
Yeah. It's tough to pick one sometimes. Sometimes they're connected. Yeah, Gail.
40 years ago.
40 years ago. Yeah. Yeah. But we go right back, right? It's amazing how that happens. Yeah, Karen.
A couple of weeks ago.
A couple weeks ago. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And here's where I'm going with this. These moments are not right now. I'm assuming. Did anyone have one for literally right this very second where you're overcome with emotion? Okay. Okay. So the feelings, they bring us back to a place, right? They feel very present. They might be rushing back to us when we think to that time and moment. They might be close to the surface, which is why we are not sharing this today. And that's okay. But the feeling of overwhelm is not right now. Even if it feels that way, it is not happening right now. This is a classic message for folks who have undergone trauma, who find themselves re-triggered. This isn't happening to you right this second, right? And that's important for us, for whom this wasn't an experience of trauma as well. Perhaps this was a joyful experience for you. It's one that brings back good memory, but it is not right now, it is memory. So there's some good news for us in this passage. The promise of the resurrection is not an empty one. Nor is it only a promise for the future life in the world to come. It's not a teaspoonful of hope. It's a promise for now that is filled to the brim with hope. This is our image for this Sunday. We have butterflies that have transformed from something that are now something else, right? Butterflies go through an incredible metamorphosis. And we do the same. We know what it's like to feel all these feelings at once in this little tiny bundle. and we do not stay there. We know what it's like to feel bound by things, like in a womb and in a tomb. But we do not stay there. God is a God of transformation, of resurrection hope. The overwhelm of feelings is perfectly real and natural for moments, and we do not stay there. The resurrection hope is a hope that we can cling to, and in some ways, we can even have glimpses of now. Mary and Martha shared their hope that their brother would experience new life on the last day. And in this story, Lazarus did not have to wait. The entire story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead can be seen as metaphor. New life can be experienced even now, even in the moments of pain and conflict, even when those feelings are fresh, even when it happened as recently as yesterday. God does not leave us in one place. No single event defines us. But there is an event that defines our faith, and it is the event that we are looking towards that names the death and the pain and the large number of emotions that we feel all at once, and names that death does not have that final word. There is a new story that can be written, that will be written again this year in just a few short days. The hope that God provides for us has the power to cut through all the feelings, not taking them away, but taking them into account and transforming them, using them to create ever more beautiful wings. People everywhere finding ways to allow hope to rise, transforming the tensions into something livable, perhaps even life-giving. They're tiny resurrections that happen all around us. Beloved children of God, the God who created our emotions and the Jesus who felt them acutely knows what it means to hold it all in tension, almost like a chrysalis. Something's budding in there. And as we all stand in this space of uncertainty, feeling complex emotions far more voluminous than what a teaspoonful can hold, may we all cling to the hope that indeed life meets us in the midst of such things. No grief, no uncertainty, no conflict, and no pain is beyond the realm of God and beyond the reach of God. And where there is God, there is hope. Where there is God, there is compassion. Where there is God, there is resurrection. May we continue to wait and hope for that truth. In the name of God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.